When it comes to breath, your body is going to just breathe. But the quality of that breath will be, let's just say the range of motion that you have will be determined by what you've learned, what you do, and what habits you've created for yourself. So if you can create the habit of bringing your awareness to your breath and to the position and posture of your body on a regular basis, then you can, with that awareness, something will shift. Just being aware of it should allow for it to shift. And can you catch yourself? Here's my challenge for you. Right? Can you catch yourself with awareness before you need to yawn and just take a deeper breath before you actually need to? So, because yawning means that you don't have enough oxygen coming to your brain. It's like you're stalling, right? The airplane's trying to climb, and it's too steep of a climb for the power of the engine, the amount of fuel, and it goes. Right? So a yawn is you stalled. You stalled your engine. So before that yawn happens, you catch it. You can try to stop it, but can you be aware 2 seconds before, 5 seconds before, 10 seconds before? I bet you 30 seconds before you're going to yawn, you're already starting to lose thought power. Your bandwidth is already starting to shut down. Right? Before the boat sinks, it starts to take on water. It takes on 1 drop of water. Is it sinking? No, not yet, but it took on 1 drop of water. It takes on 2 drops of water. Is it sinking? No, not yet. It takes on 1 liter of water. It takes on 10. It takes 100 liters. Now it takes on 1,000 liters. It's 1,000 kilograms. Now it's right at the surface, right? It's different if somebody sneaks up behind you and hits you over the head and knocks you out. Or if you're the Titanic and you hit an iceberg. Well, now you're going to sink. But there's no... right?
Yeah,
you just got hit by lightning.
3 days, and you definitely got it on.
Right, but you're just sitting here, and after a while, you start to zone out. So can you catch yourself before that happens? And just start breathing a little bit more, and it's like the crush starting to go down, and you attenuate it by just giving it a little more. Right? Your blood sugar levels are nice and smooth, and they're high, and they're starting to dip. So before they go so low that you're stressing your system, you feed yourself so that you go, right? Eat before you're hungry, hydrate yourself before you're thirsty, breathe before you are. Right? Wouldn't that give you an edge? Right? Start running way before the lion starts chasing you. You smelled it, you sensed it, and you started moving out of the way before it noticed you and started chasing you. Wouldn't that be an advantage to then waiting till it catches you and then starting to run? Right? And maybe you're strong enough that you can fight the lion, fight it off with your bare hands. But what if you could sense that lion before it senses you and just move out of its way? If you're not lion hunting, you don't want to be hunted by a lion, right? Wouldn't it be nice to know that you can feel your way out and around? Can you feel yourself, your body, the way it's breathing, the way it's hydrated, the position that it's at, right? How its physical here and now geolocation, neurophysiology. Like what's happening right here, right now with this body? Is it starting to get tired? Is it starting to... If you can catch yourself before, then because you are doing it. Yeah. Right? You're managing to not breathe the amount that you need in order to stay present in the moment. Sitting here doing nothing except listening to something. Right? Does that make sense?
Are there also things that, for example, if I don't do my workout regularly, then I will eventually, no matter what I do, feel tired. Because my body needs the energy going. So then that with the breath, it doesn't really matter in that sense, so that's all connected. Or can you just be more present with your breath all the time?
You can be more present with your breath all the time, doing nothing, and then you can be present with your breath when you're actually going out and doing something. For example, over the years, I've learned that when I run or dance or I'm active, that after a certain amount of time, I get a second wind. Right? You know, you're saying it feels great when you're in your second wind. So, how long does it take you to get your second wind? 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 45 minutes. It takes a certain amount of time, right? So I would go and I love to dance, and I would go and I would dance, and it would take a while. It would take about 45 minutes to an hour to really, really warm up and get into it and drop into sort of an overdrive dance zone where I can dance for hours. Just disappear into the day. So I thought about how can I drop into that space quicker? Why does it take me an hour? So I started paying a little attention to it, putting awareness into what's happening, and suddenly I could consistently fall into that space within 45 minutes. So I knew I needed to warm myself up for about 45 minutes. Right? And then I kept thinking, well, what's actually happening and what's going on? And I discovered that this body has different ways of functioning depending on my breathing patterns. So I learned that when I start dancing, I start moving. Now when I start stand perfectly still, and then I start moving as little as possible, and I breathe as gentle and shallow and simple as possible. And I start that way. And then I slowly start increasing my range of physical motion, but I don't do anything to change my breath. And I keep myself at an idle breath, at a low level breath, but I slowly start to warm the body up a little bit more. After about 3 minutes, my body suddenly takes a bigger breath. And as soon as it does that, I know that it's reached a point where it needs to breathe a little more. So I relax into that and I maintain my low breath. And by doing that, I acidify my blood. By acidifying the body, I wait until something shifts in my thought process and the way I feel. My neurophysiology changes because I go into acidic pH mode, which would be the same as if I just run in and start running and jumping and running and exercising and just jumping in and full, right? Jump, jump, jump. Taking big breaths and getting hot and sweaty. At some point, my body will have used up enough oxygen that it goes into that mode. And when it clicks into that mode, that's when I go into my second breath. So I allow myself to find my second breath within a few minutes. And I start by moving very, very slowly, with full awareness of my body, allowing it to move very gently and very relaxed, so that I can create the conditions for a biochemical shift in my body.
Because you're breathing them more deeply when you're...
Because at first I'm breathing in very shallow on purpose, and I'm allowing my blood to get acidic. And when it does, something shifts. I can tell because my thought process changes. The way I feel in my body changes. The temperature of my body actually increases. And I've learned that if I'm in a cold place, by breathing very slow and very shallow, that I can actually heat my body up more and have a greater tolerance to the cold. And as long as I have calories that I can intake, I'm actually quite resistant to the cold. Just by breathing slow, gentle. Does that make sense? So I can drop into, smoothly and gently go into overdrive, just go into my second breath and be relaxed into my dancing within a few minutes. What used to take 45 minutes to an hour, hour and a half. It would take hours before until I finally got
it. Is that acidic in your blood?
Then I start there's a slight shift in my pH, so then my biochemistry changes. So I thought about it, and I was like, well, let's say that I'm an Aboriginal in the bush, right? And a lion starts chasing me. So I start running as fast as I can. And at first I'm using oxygen and the blood sugar, and I'm running and running, and it's coming after me, and I keep running and running and running and running. And then at some point, I'm going to start to run out of air, right? So my body is going to either get caught by the lion and die, or there's going to be something that allows me to shift into a smoother stride. Right? But I used to love to run as a child growing up. I loved to run and cross country and track and field and things like that. And I would practice my breath with my cadence, with my how many breaths do I take for each step, right? And learning to find that sweet spot, that nice spot.
That's also why a lot of people meditate during running, because you zone out.
It puts you into a meditative state because it zones you out. So then it allows your mind to shut off for a second. And of course, if your mind is full of junk, then you have to move more and be more active and work yourself up more so that the movement of your body will synchronize with the movement of your mind. So if your mind's spinning at this rate and your body's not moving, you sit still, there's no way you can stop your mind just by sitting right and going at full speed, because you are an active member of the world, right? Then you sit still, and how is your mind going to slow down? It's very difficult for the mind to slow down sustainably. Right? So what you do is you intentionally start, your mind is spinning, and you intentionally start increasing the rate of your body through dance, through motion, through dancing, and suddenly they're both going super fast because you're dancing away, which is really fast, right? Does that make sense? And as soon as they are perfectly aligned, relative to each other, they're not moving anymore. So now suddenly, relative to your body, your mind is not moving faster. It's not moving at all. It's still. So you do that for long enough, and somewhere around while you're doing that, while you're getting there, you're running out of oxygen. You're increasing the CO2 in your blood. Your body pH is starting to drop. It's becoming more acidic. Neurotransmitters, receptors are shifting in their position, their shape, and another neurophysiology is being turned on. In that neurophysiology, there's no room for thought.
So when you have a really active mind, then just sitting and meditating doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
That's
That's right. The Vipassana meditations that were developed by Siddhartha Gautama, the first Buddha that could talk about it and share it with others. It's not the first awakened being. It's the first one who had the skills, the aptitude, the tendency to want to talk about it and share it. Most are not interested in sharing it. They just go off. He developed an active meditation, a technology for the mind of that time. 2,500 years ago, you could sit under a tree for an hour, and then you could get up and walk slowly around it for whatever, an hour, or whatever the amount it was, and then sit under the tree for an hour, and then get up and walk around it, and you could do that. And if you did that for a certain amount of time, it was enough to allow your body and your mind to synchronize, shut down, and do a reset. That was 2,500 years ago. You can't do that now. I can't do that. Not like that. Because now there's so many thoughts and ideas and so much stuff going on. So many emotions and traumas, and there's so much charge. So this is why Osho developed the active meditations. So you jump up and down and shake your body and scream and chant and wail and howl and jump and shake. And you do that and you breathe. You do these breathing exercises and you take big long breaths and you hold your breath and you shift the pH balance. And your body catches up to your mind. And when your body and your mind catch up and they synchronize, click, now something can engage. In that space, just like Chris, you were climbing the mountain yesterday, right? You were hiking and suddenly you got to a space where I would say that physiologically what's happening is that your body caught up with your mind caught up with your body, and they were able to not be separate for a moment. They were both in alignment, right? So like imagine an airplane that can refuel in flight. Because the other airplane has to get within a certain distance and maintain that range, and then there's a little connection that happens and they fuel each other, right? And now you get refueled, and now this one separates, and now you continue in that zone. you have access to do that anytime and every time you need to. Watch the activity of your mind, and when your mind is going off too intensely, you then match the activity of your body to the activity of your mind. And when they are perfectly synchronized and matched, you won't feel the difference anymore. And you have to be aware of what's happening.
Because my meditation teacher says to me that because when I'm meditating and sitting still, like my mind goes on and on and on. There's so much going on. He said you have just to go through that. But what you're saying is just go be active and then it will stop.
Right. Because the old operating system of 2,500 years ago, if you sat under a tree and slowly walked around it and drank water, and somebody bought you a bowl of rice or a water, Tupperware full of watermelon, and you could just sit under there and deal with the mosquitoes and just sit under there. Within 6 years, your mind would shut down and you could reset yourself. That's 2,500 years ago. Today, you can't do that. It doesn't work. As a matter of fact, I would actually say that go out and try it once, go do a Vipassana, experience whatever you experience once, and then go out, stop doing it, and go off and clear all the highly active parts of your mind by being highly active and aware in the process. Once you've cleared that out, then you'll know that it's working because you'll sit down to have a breakfast, or after breakfast, you'll finish your breakfast, or you'll just sit in your hammock, and suddenly, without doing anything, you will drop into that quiet space. Meditation is a medicine. Meditation is a medicine for quieting down the mind. But the poisons, the illness, the disease of the mind today is much more intense than what it was 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. So the meditation of 2,500 years ago is the last thing that you do. It's outdated, yes. The very last thing you should be able to do is just sit, and just sitting, that should be enough to shut everything off. Not the first thing you do, the last thing that you do. And all around the world, meditation teachers are teaching people that this is where they're supposed to start. And I disagree, from my own personal experience, that this is the last thing you need to do. It's the final reset happens just sitting quiet. Not the first. You have work to do before you can get to there.
My experience with meditation was while I was at the martial arts school, I started very, very deep in meditation. I allowed myself to first, my mind was very active, but I found that over time, the thoughts, like when you identify with the thoughts and then go them, the mind would slow down through the meditative practice, and it was allowed. I allowed myself to extinguish my thoughts and then be present.
Right.
But
But then if you still have to keep doing the meditation, you still need to meditate to quiet your mind down. What's that?
in other ways, like moving the body.
Right, but if you just sit quietly, is your mind active, or does it just stop all by itself?
Definitely go all the time.
Right, because it's not sustainable. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can experience it. You can do the meditations until it quiets down. Once you've done that, if it starts up again, it's because there are certain things that will not come out by sitting down. This is Gautam's mind was so complex 2,500 years ago that sitting down wasn't enough. He needed to actually walk also. That was his active meditation, was just walking slowly around the tree. The combination of both was enough to allow him to have a full reset.
And that's the reason why I need fitness, workout, running,
That's why
yoga.
this is a lot of the reasons why people get into a lot of fitness, and very body conscious people that get into working out, and really stressing or doing extreme physical activities. is because while you're doing that, it's really pleasurable because you are no longer in your mind. But there's still an active doing required to get to that point. You still need to move to get to that point. Right? All right. So meditation. Okay, it means a lot of different things for different people. For some people, it means chanting a mantra, or repeating a sound. Right? And this is a very useful device, technique for quieting down an overactive mind. If you take an overactive mind and you start chanting something, which can be Ram, 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 or your own name, or just make up any sound, it makes no difference. Anything that you chant over and over and repetitively, first, it's going to change your breathing pattern in a way that will acidify your blood. And second, it's going to put you in a trance. And a hypnotic trance will be very relaxing and soothing relative to the chaotic mind that's just shooting off in all directions. Right? So this is a very useful, very important, necessary first step for the average adult today. Has so much nonsense in their mind, so much junk, right? That if you can just repeat something over and over again, that will put you into a hypnotic trance. In that hypnotic trance, you can stay there forever if you like. And use that and call that your meditation and call that your quiet spot. And that's okay. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. However, if you look at it for what it is, it's just a hypnotic trance. So people like trance music. They can only dance to trance music. Their minds are so overactive that by dancing and moving their body to the same 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, space, you will let go of your other thoughts for a moment, and you'll feel at one and connected. But it's still in a trance space. You're still in a hypnotic space in your mind. And you need to know that, because it is not the mind that is off. The mind is on, but it's in a trance. This was figured out a long time ago with soldiers that had to march. They would get them to all march in the same way and chant in the same way, and before you knew it, they're in a trance, and they can walk all day carrying armor across the field. Right? Does that make sense? So this is this is part of the psychobiology of the mind, is that you can put yourself into a trance. So if anyone has a chaotic mind, just help them get into a trance, and that will calm them down. That's step number one. Now, would you like to go beyond that? If you want to go beyond that, then you recognize that you can find a quiet space, and that you can exist in a quiet space, even if it's a little trance bubble. Right? And then what you want to do is, instead of putting yourself in a trance, you want to avoid putting yourself in a trance. You want to stay aware. And while you're aware, you want to activate your body to match the rhythm of whatever you're feeling. So if you're feeling an anger or a strong energy or a lot of chaos in your mind, then you need to go around and just be chaotic. There's different ways of doing it. Osho has a book with 120 or 128 or something like that, different active meditations. He calls them active meditations because you do something with awareness to figure something out about yourself. It's like when you have a lid that's on too tight, you can't open it. What do? You tighten it to break the lock, and then you can open it. Right? Does that make sense? So if your mind is too active and too fast, then you have to be faster and more active than your mind. But in a chaotic way, not in a trance way. The trance way will just put you in a trance. And there's nothing wrong with trances. Are awesome. Learning how to put yourself into a trance and hypnotize yourself. When we go more into mind, I'll show you how to do that. Right? Because once you can identify how you put yourself in a trance, you can then identify how you go into a trance. Then you know how you go into trances, and then you choose to not go into trances.
Then you know that you're in trance.
Then you know when you're in trance, and then you know how to work your way out. You have to dehypnotize yourself. Mind is hypnosis. There's so many layers and so much chaos and so much contradiction that sometimes you need to just create a little trance bubble just to calm down. But it's not meditation in the true sense. It's not a meditation. It's a trance. Then you do an active meditation, which is not really a meditation. You're still a doing, but you're putting awareness into it. So it's a pseudo meditation, which is where you do these any chaotic meditation or anything that works for you. So one of them is gibberish. Just speak gibberish. Just allow. Just keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that, and you'll notice your breathing pattern changes. And at some point, it'll stop, and you'll just you'll feel something. Like you're floating, or you're just a little relaxed, and suddenly because you have brought yourself up to a certain level. Another thing you can do is with your fingers, untangle. Just, and then watch how your whole body is tight, tangled. Just get yourself into it. And you're going to feel something. Something's going to shift at some point. And you have to do whatever it is that works for you. You'll feel like a wave of something, an energy, a movement in your body, which only you can feel. I'm describing it, I don't want to describe it too much. I want you to identify what you have to feel. Another is to just go out and dance, run. Just get in the water and thrash around chaotically. So Osho mapped out a series of meditations, and he's got a book on meditations about this big, and it has over 100 different meditations. I went through and I read each and every one of them. And I discovered that there was 4 of them that I already did all by myself without calling them or thinking they were meditations. They just worked for me. And one of them is to simply sit in front of a blank wall and allow your mind to project on top of that wall. And just watch what's being projected. So the intention is, place yourself in a place, you put yourself in a place where there's a white blank wall. And I had a room in my house, and I had one wall that was blank, intentionally, so I could just sit and stare at the white wall. And in that white wall, you can stare up at a gray sky. Breathe, and just watch and see what pops up. Right? Dancing is another way of doing it. Musical instruments, keyboards or string instruments, right? It requires. Now, there's a simple tuning exercise that you can do with your body, where this was developed by Gurdjieff, where you and when I go out onto the dance floor, I will sometimes the body's not ready to move yet, and the mind's still very active. So I'll start just by following the sounds with my fingers. I start dancing with my fingers, slowly start integrating the body into it. And before you know it, mind and body have synchronized, and there's no sense of separation anymore. So whatever you do, whatever act of meditation that you do that allows you to align yourself with yourself, stop being out of alignment with body and mind. As soon as you catch that, as soon as you're aware of the fact that there's no separation between your body and your mind, you're not there anymore, you're simply watching the body, witnessing the body do this. It takes you have to do this a number of times before suddenly you get it. And you don't have to think about it anymore, you just know. There's a knowing, a silent knowing that you are there. From that moment on, I let the body go until it starts to get tired, and it will at some point start to fatigue. And then I will slow it down, and maybe walk away from the dance floor and go sit on a rock, or go sit on the beach, or slowly walk home. And they're both going fast. And then I allow the body to slow down, and with my awareness, that keeps the mind from starting up again. And you bring yourself back down to quiet. So if you do this active meditation first, afterwards it's then easier. Now you can sit and sort out the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the sentiments, whatever comes out, that only comes out when you sit quietly. But there are other things that only come out when you are active. And the things that come out when you're active do not come out when you sit quietly, and vice versa. So you can put yourself into a trance, sitting quietly, and believe that you've cleared yourself, but you haven't. You have to know that different tools, right? You have different types of screwdrivers and hammers and drills and different sized drill bits and saws and cutters and welders, and, right? All sorts of different situations, right? For wood, for plastic, for metal, big holes, small holes, hammers, screws, screwdrivers, flat screwdrivers, billet screwdrivers. Your tool chest, you need a lot more in your tool chest, more tools, yeah, to be able to clear yourself, because it's more complex than just saying, I'm going to sit and do a vipassana. I mean, if you can do it just with a vipassana, that's great, but I don't know any modern person that can do it and sustain it. Because here's the danger, right? The existential danger. You sit and you have your vipassana experience, and you feel something, and you're going to feel something. And it could very well be a very authentic, real mini-satori that you're experiencing. Now you enjoy that so much, and you've heard so many good things about it, that you want to be there. So now you go into your next vipassana with a desire to replicate that and repeat that. And with your mind, you can project the image of sitting in vipassana, awakened at oneness, in pure samadhi and satori, and there you are. And you can create the image of being in that space. Your mind is fast enough and active enough, intelligent enough, that it can reproduce and replicate. So then, of course, you need to see the white light, and you need to feel the energy going through in your chakras, and you start labeling and creating a map and a story, and then afterwards you talk to your friends, your other fellow, right, that are doing the same things, and you start to create an illusion, and you kick your dog, and your taxes. So then things aren't working, so then you have to go back and retune yourself. So you go back to you do another meditation or another vipassana. And that's one way of doing it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. That's not. There's other things that you can go further than that. You can go deeper than that. So for me, the first step is your mind so active that you can't stop it, and you need to clear yourself? Well, just what? Just guess what? Well, just hold your breath and stop breathing until your mind stops. That might stop it. Or chant a mantra, right? Over and over and over again until you calm yourself down. And this will work. But once that works, do you want to rely on doing that for the rest of your life, or would you like to get to an authentic space where you're just naturally just wake up, you have to do nothing to be relaxed and to be present? So you practice.
It's not sort of a tool not to
turn it into a crutch.
Hunger.
Yeah, right. So for the crazy, chaotic, modern mind of today, you might need to. Well, first, always just take some nice deep breaths, drink some water, and make sure your blood sugar levels are stable. That's like number one, right? Does that make sense? And turn off outside distractions. Right. Then, if your mind is so crazy and so chaotic, and accept it, it's crazy and chaotic. Great, I've got a crazy and chaotic. What do I do with it? Well, I got to put it into a trance. So then, put it into a trance. Listen to your favorite trance music. Repeat a mantra over and over again, right? Calm yourself down. Now you're in that space. Now pull yourself out of that space and watch how your mind starts to accelerate. So now as your mind is accelerating, accelerate your body. Get it moving. Get it really dynamic. Moving. Dancing. Maybe put on some complex music like spong. Right? Multiple layers of music. Do something a little bit chaotic, doing active meditation, right? And do an active meditation for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and try get the Osho book on meditations. I have it upstairs. I can bring it down. You can look at it and read through and try all the meditations and see what works for you. What tool do you need? What kind of screwdriver do you need to find out whatever screw is loose and pull it out or tighten it up, whatever the case is, right? However it works for you, and keep doing that but wean yourself off of it. Wean yourself off of it. Don't depend on it. Look at how you're clearing the junk, and then make sure you don't put more junk back in. Right? Television, film, movies. There's a series of things that you can do to create noise in your mind, and we'll discuss those today. Right? And now you have chaotically shaken yourself loose a little bit. And then allow yourself to slowly just go back down and then go into yourself. And allow yourself to go about it, and then just watch your mind. And this becomes your meditation process. It's like sometimes you go see a doctor and you have an infection, and they say, "Oh, it's nothing. Just drink a lot of fluids and eat some soup and stay in bed and read a book and relax." Sometimes they say, "Hey, it looks like you have an infection, so why don't you take this antibiotic?" Sometimes they say, "This is pretty serious. I'm going to give you a course of 2 different antibiotics and some supplements and some things because you really need to work on this. It's a more progressive, serious infection, and you want to kill it before it hurts you, right?" So think of your meditation as your medicine. How many different medicines do you need? You need to do some yoga, you need to do some Tai Chi, you need to jump up and down, you need to write some things down, you need to scream a little bit, you need to just let some gibberish out, you need to shake your hands and wiggle and jump and shake, and you need to go get a massage, right? You might need 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 different things to eventually, right? Does that make sense? Eventually you should be able to just sit without doing much and quiet yourself down. And as soon as you can sit without doing much, without doing hardly anything, and quiet yourself down, you must stop doing anything. You must stop meditating. You must allow meditativeness to descend upon you all by itself. How do you know? Because one day you do your routine, your yoga, your Tai Chi, or whatever it is that you like to do, right? All the things that you like to do. You do everything. And one day, out of the blue, for no reason whatsoever, a cloud of thunder, or a butterfly goes by, or a honk of the horn from the street down below, and just present. You were doing nothing. Nothing. You just finished your breakfast. You're just sitting there. The clouds moved and a little bit of light came through, and a little bird sang or chirped or something. Right? And without doing anything, there you are. It's gentle and quiet. To, from this moment on, just create situations that allow that to happen without you having to do anything. So maybe you stop doing your Tai Chi for a while. You stop doing your Tai Chi, your yoga, your meditation, you do nothing. And see what happens. And you keep track of the thoughts that start to come up. The residual thoughts. The ones that get distracted by your yoga, your focus, your meditation, Tai Chi or dance, whatever you're doing. It doesn't really matter. It's like layers and layers. An archaeologist looks at a place where they might find some bones with a missing link or something like that, right? So there's rock, they start with a pick and with a chisel, and then they get to a point where it looks like there might be a bone, so then they use a smaller little shovel, right? And then they use the little brush, and they just gently clearing away, and then they find a rock, so then you have to knock it aside. And then you use a tiny little brush and just a teeny little. Does that make sense? Some things are sticky. You need to have a dynamite. Eventually, you need to be able to just sit and just doing nothing spontaneously, just laying in bed, just sitting in traffic, just get off the phone, you put it out, and suddenly, when you reach that point where it's happening automatically, all by itself, you do not want to pollute that by then saying, "Right now I will meditate more." Now, see what happens by itself, and start looking at what you're doing to add noise and pollution to the mix.
And you see the silence.
As soon as you find the moments of clarity, then you sit in science and you let them go wider, let them deepen. You want to have dozens of different sources of moments of clarity in different situations, and as soon as you recognize them, you just want to appreciate them. Right? Like a fine chocolate that you put one little piece in your mouth and you just let it melt in your mouth and let all the flavors come through, and then it's finished. Let's say that you're lost somewhere here, right? You're in this space. Somewhere in here, you're here. And unknowable, you're anywhere. Here, whatever. Right? And you're in the fog. How do you find the center? This is a contained space. And you want to find the center, but like if I want to measure this table, and all three tables, and I want to find the exact middle, what must I do to find the precise middle? Where do I measure from? From the outside. From the outside. I can't find it from the inside. I have to actually go to the outside. And I got to go from the outside, and then I got to go to the outside, and then I got to go to the outside, and then I got to go to the outside, and then I got to go to the outside, I got to go to the outside, I got to go to the outside, and eventually, if I keep going to the outside, when I find the outside, all of the circumference is going to be equidistant from the center. Every time you give yourself an active meditation, what you're doing is I'm lost somewhere in my unconscious. I'm lost somewhere in my mind. There's so much confusion. There's so many questions. There's so many thoughts. There's so many feelings. There's so many unanswered questions. How do I find that quiet? I'm just going to go and I'm going to sit quietly and do nothing and sit in Vipassana and find my center. So you sit here, but how do you know that's your center? You have no way of knowing. The only way of knowing where your center is by going to the extremes. So I can't find my quiet center, but I can find my maximum extreme. Right? So what is my extreme physically of what I can do? Jump and dance, right? Emotionally, I can howl and scream and yell and hit a pillow, and I just push myself to my limit. As soon as I reach the extreme, and I reach that limit, as soon as I reach the outside of the storm, right? Osho likens it to a tornado, to a hurricane, right? Not it's spinning. You spin yourself, you get yourself going as fast as your runaway crazy mind is. So, relative to each other, they are aligned. Now you are in alignment with your center. When you are in alignment with your center, you feel something. You feel a peace. You feel a joy. You feel a oneness. You feel a connectedness. You enter a beautiful state. Now, here is where most people get stuck. I did this for decades. I learned all of the ways that I could get myself to my circumference where I felt centered, balanced, at one, connected, peaceful, empowered, awake, and enlightened. And I felt everything. And I could say it, here I am, I'm in this space.
On the outside.
But I was on the outside and I didn't know. I didn't know. Once you reach that space, what you need to do is Osho says you have to turn around and look inward. Your awareness has to turn inward. So, you're at the circumference, the easiest thing to do is allow yourself to slow down and fall into the center.
And then it happens right after you've been on the outside.
And that happened. The way to get there is to do it easily. Now, some people do that by, for example, jumping into a bucket of ice cold water. For a moment, right? Somebody else does it by jumping up and down. Somebody else does it by just doing so many lines of cocaine that they're freaking out so much, right? That they, at some point, they feel like they're somehow balanced or centered. But that's not sustainable. So, jump into a bucket of ice water, into a bathtub with ice water, and they go in 1 second, they're like, right? And then they extend it for 2 seconds, and for 2 minutes, and for 3 minutes, and they can stay there for an hour. And they start to build an ego and an identity around the fact that they can do these things for longer and longer, and they hold the Guinness World Record of being in the coldest possible water for the longest amount of time. And it feels good, so they keep doing it. They find maybe half a dozen to a dozen different ways of doing it. But I say something slightly different. If you need a bucket of ice cold water to quiet yourself down, then jump into a bathtub of ice cold water and quiet yourself down. Once you learn that you can quiet yourself down, now I'm going to inspire you to jump into a bucket of almost ice cold water and see if that can slow you down. And then into a bucket of water that's at a little warmer, because wouldn't it be nice to just be able to turn on the shower and that just warm or cool or hot or whatever, it doesn't really matter, whatever feels best, that's enough to just, there you are at one. Wouldn't it be, and you can still jump into buckets of ice all you want, because maybe you like it. Or maybe you don't like it so much. What you like is the feeling of being quiet. Right? Does that make sense? Like, you can put yourself into more and more and more extreme situations. Once you find something that feels just so yummy, so connected, you can keep doing that more and more and more and more and be the best at doing that. That's one option. The other option is to, how can you get there with less? As a matter of fact, how can you just wake up already feeling so yummy that jumping into a bucket of ice is the last thing you want to do? Unless there's a good reason to. And then because you've done it, you can jump into ice cold water and pull your baby out and stay calm, clear, because you understand.
You to go to, yes, because for example, if I do my fitness, my workout, my running, my dancing, my yoga and everything, so I found all my edges. And then I find my center. But when I stop doing my edges, then I will know that my body will feel stiff or it needs movement.
Well, your body needs to move whatever amount it needs in order to feel good. So give your body, the body needs what it needs in order to feel good. Independent of mind. Right? So whatever amount of physical activity you need, give yourself that, as well, just like you need to brush your teeth every day, right? You need to eat, and you need to sleep, and you need a certain amount of movement and exercise. That's you. Right? So that baseline, that default level of activity, yeah, sure. Body needs a certain amount of movement. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, apart from that, you can do that to an extreme where you're no longer overwhelmed by your mind. So do that. Get to that extreme. Find what that is and do that well. But then allow yourself to drop back down to stillness. And from that stillness point, you do all this active stuff first, right? You allow yourself to drop into that stillness. And now from this stillness point, what I want you to consider is, can you watch what you do to turn yourself back on, to accelerate your mind back again? How is your mind turning back on again is a critical component of the next step. Otherwise, you will stay dependent on jumping into ice water or using some sort of mechanism, some device that trances you out with light and with sound, or you have to smoke that cigarette and poison yourself with carbon monoxide, or the joint, or the whiskey, or the glass of wine, or the sex, or make more money, or gambling, or you got to do something that's so exciting that you just forget yourself for a minute. Right? So, identify what it is that works for you, And that's great. These are valuable. They're useful. They're necessary. You must do them. Like go and go do UPW and Day with Destiny with Anthony Robbins. Jump up and down. Do your mantra. Make your move. Right? Take massive action. Do these things. But in a way that allows you to know yourself better, not in a way that allows you to transfer yourself out. Right? Does that make sense? Not through repetition. Do it until you get it and then stop.
It's actually what they're doing in yoga, because then you have the activeness and then shavasana and then stop.
Right. But once you get to a point where your mind starts to, where you suddenly find yourself centered and balanced without doing anything. You're just sitting there and it's traffic or it's job or you're sitting on your airplane or you're sitting in your office, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And suddenly that means you've done enough meditations to get to that point. Now you need to focus on, your awareness needs to go into what do you do to disturb that? Because if it's getting disturbed again, you're doing it. Well, you can say that the neighbor, made too much noise, or your partner said something you didn't like, or whatever the situation is, but you're the one that's reactionary to it. Or all by yourself, you start thinking about what somebody did or what somebody didn't do, or what you needed to do, or whatever the situation is. So it's going to start up again.
So what did it disturb it for you? Because you had an awakening, then one point you're like, oh, I'm sitting here and I'm present. What did it disturb for you?
My own content of my mind, my experiences, my unanswered questions was the main source of all of my own disturbances. So I actively chose to look into that and finish and clear all of my questions, all of my thoughts, all of my doubts, all of my insecurities, address them, challenge them, see if they're real. See if I'm asking a question that has an answer, or is it just a question that makes you stupid? Yes, there are stupid questions. Any question that makes your mind go on without stopping is a stupefying question. So I started listing out and mapping out my thoughts, my beliefs, my values, my approaches towards life, and identifying them. Because they were disturbing me, they were pulling me out of my peace and quiet. But I was so worked up that it took me about 2 years of going out to the middle of the Mojave Desert once a week, twice a month, dancing all night before one day I just naturally just cleared and dropped down and was fully present and centered and clear without knowing, without aware of that I was aware of that, but I was aware that I was just present. And what I'd been doing each one of those experiences was going back and reliving my childhood traumas, checking out my questions, my beliefs, and working them out on the dance floor. Anything that would interfere or disturb my capacity to just sit quietly and just be feeling good without doing anything, I just worked on that. And that took me 10 years to clear out. The reason it took me 10 years to clear it out is because I didn't know what I know now. I wasn't aware. I figured it out step by step. So when we look into the mind, the construct of the mind, I will share with you what I learned about how that is. But I had to map it out. So I had to go in and out, in and out, in and out. It's like imagine going into the jungles here in Kopangan and deciding to map out every species of every plant and every animal and every fungus and every microorganism How long would that take? It might take some time. It might take years. It might be a decade's worth of work, right? But I can also just get online and download a book of all the animals, all the plants, all the flora of this area, right? And I can identify it, and then I can, with that book on my phone with a picture, I can go and go, oh, that's one of these, that's one of those, that's one of those. And then it might take me a lot less time to identify what are the organisms in my ecosystem, right? So by going in and out, and recognizing the different pieces of the puzzle, eventually I recognize that there are certain patterns that you need to identify. Right? Before you can start to identify these patterns, you need to first fully know. You got to grok it. You got to know it. Like every cell of your body has to understand that you should be able to be fully present, fully relaxed, energized, awake, alert, feeling good, quiet, sort of like open heart, quiet mind, without doing anything.
It's like having the manual for the flora in the mountains and then looking it for it here, while you should have the book for the jungle.
Right. Well, first you have to get the baseline of where you are. So the first step is breathe properly, hydrate properly, eat properly, stretch properly, sleep properly, move your body, figure out what your body needs in order to feel good, physically. Now there's going to be some emotional things that are going to come up. When you've got a toothache or you just stubbed your little toe at night, and the pain just, it's like exploding in your head, are you thinking about your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your taxes or what your mother said or what's the meaning of life? Are you thinking about any of that? No. You're in pain. There's nothing to think about. Some people actually go out of their way to inflict pain on themselves because it relieves them temporarily of all the nonsense, physical, psychological, emotional, all the stuff they're doing to themselves. The physical pain, it clears themselves. I discovered this as a child, going to the dentist. I realized early on that I was in no danger of feeling pain from a cavity that was being drilled. So I would choose to not take any anesthetic and just experience the pain. Because it's not like, there's a rock crushing your skull, right, or your leg is being torn off. You're just sitting there, you're going to be fine. You're in no danger. And yet it's one of the most excruciating pains that you'll ever experience is having your teeth removed. So I chose to just see if I could just sit and be relaxed and allow the pain to wash through me. So I learned pain tolerance. Right? Does that make sense? With extreme pain, you're not there. There's no fault. So pain is a way of quieting that mind down. Your mind's going a little. Remember Abbott and Costello? You ever see one of those? You just slap. You start. Oh, thanks, I needed that. Just give yourself a slap, or get a rubber band, put it around your wrist, and give yourself a snap, and watch how instantly all of your worst problems and fears and insecurities are instantly gone because of a rubber band or a little slap you give yourself. And how important is it that a rubber band can temporarily dispel that demon? It's not that serious, right? Right now, if somebody is, I don't know, putting a hot poker in your eye, I doubt you'll feel the rubber band. The rubber band will not distract you from that actual pain. But she stabbed me in the back. She betrayed me. I'm suffering. Oh, I'm suffering. Actually, it's less than a rubber band. Okay, does that make sense? Or you're suffering, it's really bad. Well, take one of those tiny, tiny, tiny little Thai chilies and chew on it. And then, how many of your worst problems come up while you're chewing on a tiny little, this big, little, it won't kill you, it won't hurt you.
Well, it does hurt you.
It won't harm you in any way. You'll feel the pain. It'll actually clear your pain channels and it will allow you to feel more pleasure. Right? Learn how your body works, so that first you can give it a pleasurable experience just physically. Because if you're in pain, you won't be able to go deeper. So, and this goes even Gautama Buddha says, take care of your body before you attempt to do any meditation. He was doing yoga hours a day. He was fasting. He was forcing himself. He was trying everything and pushing and pushing and pushing. So the story goes. And he went to go get some water from a river, and he slipped. He fell in. He was so weak he couldn't pull himself out. He almost drowned. Holding onto a branch at the side of a river, he realized this can't be the way to ultimate freedom. Being so weak that I can't even. So he stopped doing all of that and chose to just give up and just sit under a tree and do nothing. All of the work he had done was a necessary requirement. You can't suddenly say, well, then I'm going to go, look, there's one of the same trees, the Bodhi trees live in there. I'm going to just sit under that tree and I'm going to awaken. You can't do that. You have to go through everything you have to go through. But his metaphor was, even for meditation, was when you use a canoe to cross the lake, don't carry it on your head up the mountain. Just leave it behind. So use your trancing and mantras and yogas and tai chis and disciplines and tantras and yantras and all, whatever there is. Use all of that to experience moments of oneness, connection, pleasure, bliss, unity. And yes, it's real. You are feeling that, right? But you're doing something extreme to feel it. So rather than getting stuck there, now recognize, yes, I can do this, and start thinking about, what do you do to pull yourself out of just being in that space naturally? Because you're doing whatever it is that you're doing.
Yourself right now, the constant presence without.
It's ordinary. It's no longer. It's effortless. I don't have to do anything. I make effort to go out of that space into my virtual reality creativity mechanism, my mind, my tool for creating, for building a bridge, for designing a space that can be useful to others, for creating a corporation that can channel the abundance, right? We're finding a way to market and brand it. So we'll talk to JT Fox.